Okay, so the recording is in progress. Okay, so these are the objectives of the webinar today. Just providing an overview of the standard Unit4 business world, what processes are involved in record to report and the related functionality, general introduction of Unit4 business world, getting familiar with the Unit4 business world terminology, and understanding the cornerstones of Unit4 business world. So this, I mean, R2R has a lot of things in it, so this is going to be a more generic, more general discussion. But if, I mean, I can take more specific questions at the end of the discussion if there are any. I also wanted to make it a bit more interesting, so I have some quiz questions for you guys. So let's see if you guys can get them, get the answers for them. So after a few slides, I'll have a quiz question for you, just to make it a bit more interactive, or to make it a bit more interesting. So so introduction to Unit4 business world, standard record to report processes, business structure, posting journals, period end, the four cornerstones of Unit4 business world. Does anybody remember, or does everyone remember the four cornerstones of Unit4 business world? Flexi fields, workflow and action management, document archive, users and roles. So these are the business processes that we always see in record to report, financial reporting and analysis, posting journals, and period end. Record to report is essentially the whole business structure of the financials. How you're gonna post something, or what is the hierarchy, what is the accounting structure. That's what it is all about. As I said, business structure, accounting, and reporting. And then obviously posting journals. How would you post the journal? What would the analysis string? What would be the posting string? What attributes will you use in the analysis? And any interface, if you have any interfaces coming through to the general ledger, that will also need to be considered. And obviously it involves month-end processes, year-end processes, and what do you do to control them? How do you post adjustments for these processes? Okay, so again, just as I said, it's a quiz question. So the question is, with regard to transaction and period reallocation triggers, because we have some triggers where if we define these triggers and the transaction is posted, it then triggers that posting, and it then adjusts the transaction according to what you define in that trigger. So you could have some period reallocation triggers, you could have also transaction triggers. So with regards to transaction and period reallocation triggers, which one of the following statements is true? Just take a couple of seconds to read that. Both transaction and periodic triggers use transaction types with treatment code PR. Don't think so, because that's periodic triggers only. The transaction triggers are driven by the TPS, whereas periodic triggers are driven by a server process. Both transactions and periodic triggers are driven by the TPS. Both transactions and periodic triggers definition must be client specific. The answer is B. So transaction triggers are driven by the transaction processing service, and whereas periodic triggers are driven by a server process. So periodic triggers, you actually have to run a process to post the periodic trigger transactions. Whereas transaction triggers, once you have defined them, they will just post them by themselves, because the TPS runs in the background. So that's just a fact. And I know some people might not use triggers or periodic triggers, but it's just some useful information. Sorry. So these are the four cornerstones of Unit4 business world. I asked you if you remember them. These are attributes, relations, account rules, and reporting. Essentially, query and layout is what reporting is. So these are the four cornerstones of Unit for Business World, and that's how our record to report processes work using all these four cornerstones. So just going into all of these cornerstones briefly, what are attributes and what kind of attributes does everything in Unit for Business World is an attribute, everything. So so the kind of attributes that you have in Business World is system attributes, posting attributes, and reporting attributes. System attributes would be, account, your supplier ID, your customer ID. These are system attributes, and there's obviously some overlap of system and reporting attributes and system and posting attributes, because cost centers you use in your posting analysis, customer group you can report on them. So these overlap between each other.
100%.
So system attributes are necessary for the application to run. Posting attributes is something that you use at the transactional level. Use them in the posting string, and reporting attributes are used for reporting purposes. Sorry. Okay, so attributes can be viewed upon multiple ways. As I said, everything in the application is an attribute. It's just a means of presenting the information in the application. You could view the attributes via the attribute values, or the attribute register, which is the system attributes, or the attribute. So you can define the attributes in multiple ways. You could have attribute values in the attribute values window, or you could have a master file for the attribute. For example, you want to create a, if you want to hold more information about a cost center, you might have a user-defined master file for cost center. So you can do that in the application. Just more definition of an attribute. It's a label on a list of values. Below you can have an example of an attribute, which is an office. The values will be, the location of the office, or location of an office will be an attribute. The values will be Amsterdam, London, Geneva, etc. So essentially, these values just describe what the attribute is. Again, a question about an attribute. This, I think everyone knows about attributes, whether they are not using much of Aggressor or not. So they should be able to get this. With respect to attributes, which one of the following is true? An attribute ID must consist of at least 2 alphanumeric characters. An attribute ID can consist of up to 4 alphanumeric characters. An attribute ID must consist of at least 1 number and 1 letter. It is possible to assign attribute IDs automatically with auto numbering. What do you guys think? Okay, so the answer is so the attribute ID in the application consists of up to 4 alphanumeric characters. You could have only numeric, you could have only alphabets, you could have alphanumeric. So it's up to you guys. So that's the answer for the question. Again, then we went through the attributes, and these are the relations. Relations are very important because we use them for reporting and everything. The connection between attribute values of 2 different attributes. It just tells you that what is the difference between the relations in a relation database and relations in because the application is just like it is a database, isn't it? But the relations help you to define and present the hierarchy in a more graphical, in a more friendly, user-friendly way. And there are different types of relations. You could have, default relations. You could have direct relations. You could have indirect relations. Default relation would be, for example, supplier to supplier group, customer to customer group, product to our product group. These are your default relations, which are already defined in the system for you, which helps you in the reporting or in any other inquiries that you do. Direct relations are the there's something you use to complete your posting analysis. So these are fixed relations, direct relations, and indirect relations that you define, which are user defined to help you with reporting, or even reporting or building hierarchies or the business structure. So application of relations, as I said, it's used everywhere. Reporting, code completion. Code completion is where you use your direct relations. Auto numbering, you can use them. You actually use relations for auto numbering. For example, you wanna auto number your supplier, with a prefix, or with a prefix of for example, maybe the supplier group, or what kind of supplier it is. So you can use that. Sorry. Validation and account rule. Example, you use your tax codes on an account as a relation. You could have products with there's multiple ways of fixing tax codes, or maybe on the product or on the supplier, or on even in the account. And then driving, it also drives. It also helps in workflows. They can be used in workflows to drive or route the workflow to a relevant person, or depending on the relevant value. Helps in driving processes, server processes, and also helps in data control. Data control is quite important here as well, because if you, for example, you have data control on a cost center or on a company attribute, you would have a role which is related to that cost center and would have data control on that role. So again, relations come in every place. So this is another question. I just said that. So you guys should know this. Fixed relations are always indirect relations, used with posting attributes, used with reporting attributes, and direct relations. So only one of them is true. This is easy. Fixed relations are always direct relations. Hopefully you all got that. 4 Cornerstones account rules. So here we are at the account rules. A rule that defines and validates the data to be included in a transaction. So I guess you guys are familiar with all the account rules. And on every account, there are 7 free posting attributes. We can also call them dimensions. So you've got available 7 different dimensions that you can use in your posting attribute. Then also the account rule helps you in code completion. You could have a direct relation, as I said before, or you could have a value matrix which takes in 2 or more values and then gives you a value that you want for validation. You could have also validation based on indirect relations. You can determine the VAT treatment. As I said, you could either fix it on the product, either fix it on the supplier, or either fix it on the account, or through a value matrix. So the different ways to determine the VAT treatment. Templates. You could have templates on the account rules. You could also have statistical information, numbers and quantities. So it doesn't always have to be a financial account rule. It can also be statistical information. For some people, you might need student numbers or employee numbers or similar kind of things. So this just tells you what needs to be recorded, how an account rule looks, what are the information needs. So if somebody asks you, if you're having a workshop, for example, you need to define an account rule for every account, what you need for that account. Obviously, it depends on your reporting needs. It depends upon your financial analysis needs for the business. So you could have, for example, in this car expenses, you want the cost center, you want the resource that the car is related to, and the license plate of the car. So it just helps in reporting, doesn't it? So this will be in every GL transaction when it posts to that account. You could have the cost center, the resource, and the license plate of the car. Okay, so now we are on the reporting side. So we talked about attributes, which was number one. We talked about relations, number two, and then we talked about we're talking about the reporting. We talked about account rules, sorry, number three, and then we are talking about the reporting. So I mean the application is quite powerful in terms of reporting. You have the browsers. Then you can lay them out as charts. You could have accelerators if everyone knows about them. You could have ARC reports, but actually the ARC is now into extra reports now. In the new version of Milestone 7, you've got new report engines coming in, so you've got extra reports. They are more powerful. Gives you more flexibility of defining a report in a PDF, or your stationary reports for your purchase orders or your invoices. Very much powerful than ARC reports. Then you could have a word eraser as well. As an accelerator, you could have word eraser for your HR documents if you have HR or payroll. For example, your induction documents, you could have a word eraser which just comes out of the application, and you could have web service. You could have web reports as well via web service. So this is what a browser looks like. If everybody's using Aggressor, that is quite, everybody should know what a browser looks like. This is what a chart looks like. You could have a chart. You could have a browser convert to a chart that could be used for graphical analysis. This is an Excel. So you could actually report out in Excel, or you could have accelerators that obviously they have that have the Excel layout. So when you are deciding on what to do with the queries and browsers, you need to do what points to consider. You need to decide on the order of columns, change the header of columns, method of displaying them. Are they going to be aggregated, or are they going to be individual transactions? Decide on sorting, subtotals, where you need to zoom to the transaction level. So these are the browsers. These are the options. Obviously there are a lot of options, but these are some of the options that you have when you're designing your own custom browsers in Aggressor. I keep saying we've got this habit of saying Aggressor, but it's called Unit4 Business World now, so I should change my habits. So yeah, as I said, so you can export to Excel and Accelerator as well, as I said before. So these advanced queries, you can have you could have advanced browsers that you can make on like for example, this is available on master files. You have advanced browsers that you can use on those. For example, supplier master files, custom master files, and so on and so forth. These advanced options offer you more selection and search possibilities. You could save it as a browser template. For example, if you don't want the users of your organization to change the browser or add something to it, you can just save it as a template, as a read-only template, and when they access it, the results come in. The browser just runs. Doesn't give them an option to filter it or add something. It's just a template, and results can be viewed immediately. So that's how you can manage your reporting for users. They can be global and private. So if a specific user wants a report for himself or herself, you could use the report. You could just make the report and have them as private for that user, or you could have global for everyone. Design on search criteria. You can add special fields via links in the data model. So you could expand base. You could go to another table if they're linked, and then you could add a value that is not in that specific area of what you're inquiring on. You could use expressions and you could use relations and add flexi fields as well. We're going to cover flexi fields a bit down the line, but you could add relations and those flexi fields as well. And we've got balance tables. Balance tables are used quite a lot in the business world. They normally, the simplest definition of a balance table is that they show you information at an aggregated level. They don't give you individual transactions. So they show you totals per period, and you can also have posting attributes and reporting attributes included in them. Information is available across the modules. You've got some system defined balance tables already, and which also the system uses. For example, expenses. For expenses, there's already a balance table defined in the system which it uses to transfer the expenses to post the expenses. So there are already some balance tables, but you can make your own balance tables for your own reporting needs. For example, if you want to make a P&L or a balance sheet, you could use a balance table browser for inquiry. So you use a defined table. As I said, you can define a balance table yourself, and obviously they're not to be confused with balance. They don't balance, but they're just called balance tables. And reporting possibilities via self-service. So I don't know if many of you use the self-service client. You could have actually you could create the report in the smart client in the desktop client, and it could be made available in the self-service. So you could make a report in the desktop client, and you could publish it for a user in the web, so they can use it in the web because it looks more user friendly for them. So that is more graphical, user friendly for them. In Milestone assignment, actually, it is possible now to create a report directly in the web. So you need to define some objects. Not many people do it, but it's as time goes on and on, more things are shifting towards the web. So you can actually create the report from scratch in the web as well. Before it wasn't possible to. You could also create charts in self-service. That was always there. So if you have a report, you could then display the chart in the web, and it's a pretty quick and simple setup to show data graphically in the web. And flexi fields. Flexi fields is quite good in the sense that to hold more information, and you would always have more information that you want to hold for an attribute or for an area that you want. For example, suppliers, customers, employees. You might need some more space to hold that information. So flexi fields is a good way to hold that. They have got different types of fields in them to let you hold more information. You could have text fields, you could have number fields, date. You could use attribute values, and you could actually view them individually for the master file, or you could have them in a table. Depends, and it just extends the relations functionality. So you for example, on a customer, on a supplier, you might want to hold more information about whether there was reliability checks or credibility checks done. So somebody inputs that information when the check was done, and you want to hold that for the supplier. What date of the check was done? Where was the date of the next check that you need to do for your risk analysis? So these type of things you can hold against the supplier in a flexi field. it just gives you an example of what specialist product data, ability to hold extensive personnel data. As I said, HR people actually require quite a lot of data. So wherever we have implemented HR for our customers, they have. I mean, normally in personnel, you've got 8-7 tabs into the master file for personnel, but normally it just extends up to maybe 15 or 16 tabs after we have done the implementation, because HR needs quite a lot of information for the employees that they want to hold against them. What it offers, as I said, multiple field types. You could have multiple fields. You could have optional data validation on them as well. You could have mandatory. So if you are making a new master file, for example, a customer or supplier, if you have those specific fields and they're made mandatory, you can't really save them unless you have the information which is mandatory. Presentation, as I said, presentation as individual or table format, multiple tabs, optional authorization. You could use them as optional authorization for authorization as well. Benefits. It's just to improve presentation of information, improve data content, so your data is more rich. You hold more information against a master file that you wanted, because in the system you might think that this is quite limited information. I want to hold more information against my employee. It gives you that benefit, and actually creates a table in the database as well. So once it creates a table, it gives you opportunities to connect to different tables, to report on them, to use them in the ARC reports, for example, or use them in the extra reports. And so I've seen companies, for example, if you have if you have multiple companies within the client, I've seen customers use, like, for example, logos for the stationary reports. So you could have a logo sitting in a flexi field, and going to a location to get that logo within the flexi field, and then use that flexi field in the ARC report to get the right logo for the invoices or for the purchase orders. So that there's multiple benefits of using flexi fields. Okay, with respect to flexi fields on the custom master file, so this is on the custom master file, which is one of the following statements is false. So 3 of them are true actually, and 1 of them is false. Flexi fields may be included in customer server reports. Flexi fields may be part of the custom element type. Flexi fields may be included in a browser inquiry on customer. Flexi fields may be used in customer workflow. So you need to identify which is not the correct one. Okay, the answer is they cannot be included in customer server reports. So, for example, if you want to run, invoicing process for a customer, you can't include flexi fields in that process, but you can include them in element type. So you could use them in the workflow from there, and as I said, you could use them for reporting in an inquiry or in the workflow. And we've got users and roles. So the record to report, as I said, covers a lot of areas. One of them is user access, menu access, roles access, and whenever we go to customers when we are implementing the application from scratch, this is something which is which is forgotten about, or we think that we could deal with it later, but we need to think about it from before. What are the users? What are the roles going to be? How are they going to access the system? We need to think about that. So users are connected to roles. What alerts are they going to get? And workflow tasks are connected to users. And connection is via resource. So there's multiple things that are happening in the user master file. User is connected to a role. The role is connected to a resource. So you need to think about that. How is that going to work? User can connect to multiple roles. So you can have a user which has multiple roles, and based on that role, how is their access in the system going to be? They can also have access to multiple clients. So the same user, you don't have to you don't have to create use for different clients if you have different clients in the system. So you could have the same user access different clients based on the roles that they have. And obviously, you could use data control roles as well to give them limited access or on areas of the system that you want. And normally we have a convention that we just want to add that we have a convention to distinguish roles. For example, if you have menu access roles, you will start with the prefix of M. So that just shows you that these roles are just giving menu access. If we have data control roles, we would start them with D. If you have workflow roles, you would start them with W. So these just standard best practice of how roles are set up.
There's no point. Is that just today? Ah.
Sorry, Connie, can you mute your voice? Okay, so if we got role user-based access, we can for a role we have these access levels, authorization levels that we have. They could actually wherever in the menu they have this option, you could actually either create, read, update, and delete. So you can have multiple authorization levels based on that. For some people, you don't need you might just need to give them access of read only. So that is what you will select. You won't select the C, U, and D boxes. You just select the read option, which gives them the option to just for read only. So if you, for example, a purchase order, you don't want anybody to amend the purchase order, you would just give them a read only option, a read option. As I said, menu-based access it's the same functionality, but based on the aggressor menu. Before it was role access. This is menu-based access. Start thinking about possible groups of users based on the functions they perform. So you need to think about, obviously, when you're implementing aggressor, you need to think about possible groups of users, and you need to be standardize most of the access. So you normally have like a default access for all users as a minimum. So you need to decide what everyone should get, and then drill down in specific areas that people need for the access for the system. So this is what a workflow looks like. If no one has implemented workflows before, this is what our workflow looks like, and it gives you it's a graphical representation of what how it will flow, and it's user defined. It just automates the process of authorization. Okay, so another question. A workflow user step must include the following. For people who have implemented workflows in the organization, they should know this. As a minimum, you can't save a user step if you don't do this. What is it? Is it an action, deadline, and a function? A deadline, a function, and a rule group. Action, function, a rule group, an action, and a deadline. So this is very good, Caroline. Caroline was really good. That's the answer. Okay, so summary, what we have covered today. We have covered the introduction to aggressor. What is attributes and who Cornerstones is the introduction, the record to report processes, the business structure, posting journals, and it was more generic, but we can't really go into that much detail because of the time we have. We talked about the 4 cornerstones of Aggresso, the reporting, the account rules, the relations, the attributes, the flexi fields we talked about, workflow, document archive we haven't talked about, but and users and roles. Document archive is really where you have where you can save documents for your processes, and they're available for different areas of the system. So, for example, you want to hold purchase order documents, you want to hold invoice documents, you want to hold goods receiving documents. So, the system lets you define a document type, and then you can hold a document in the system for that. So, whenever a user wants to access a document based on the process, they could view the document. So, the application gives you that functionality. And we talked about users and roles. So that's me finished. I'm just going to unmute you also. If there are any questions, you can ask me. Has anybody got any questions? I hope it was useful. I know it was a bit more generic, but as I say, it might just be a refresher for you people who already have Aggresso and using the application. Okay, so if nobody has a question, then thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have had some useful information in this webinar. Don't forget for the webinars and the dates for them, because I think the next one is the reporting one, which will be quite useful. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.